Your phone lights up at 11 p.m., and something in you, before the conscious mind has even fully registered what is happening, something in you settles. Not in relief, not quite. More like the particular calm that comes when a familiar situation presents itself, when the thing you are best at is suddenly required. Someone needs you. And you are good at this. You have always been good at this. You are the person people call from parking lots when they cannot go back inside. You are the person who gets the 2 a.m. voice message, the "I don't know what to do" text, the phone call that begins with "I just need to hear your voice." You are the one who knows, almost instinctively, how to talk someone down from the ledge. Not because you read about it somewhere, but because you have been doing it so long and so fluently that it feels less like a skill and more like a native language. You are, in the lives of multiple people who love you, the person who makes everything survivable. And here is the part that almost never gets said out loud. You are exhausted. Not the kind of exhausted that sleep fixes, not the kind that a vacation addresses. The specific structural exhaustion of a person who has been operating at full emotional capacity for other people continuously for years, while quietly, consistently running on empty themselves. You know the weight of 100 other people's crises. You have held their grief, absorbed their panic, metabolized their chaos into something manageable, and handed it back to them transformed. And when was the last time someone did that for you? Not someone who tried. I know there are people who have asked, "How are you?" and meant it. I mean someone who actually received what you gave them, who sat with your uncertainty without rushing to fix it, who let your voice shake without immediately reassuring you back to composure, who treated your difficulty with the same quality of attention you give to everyone else's. If the honest answer is, "I can't remember," then this is the video you needed. Here is what I want to explore with you today. Not the tiredness, you already know about the tiredness. Not the resentment. If you have been in this pattern long enough, you have felt the resentment, even if you have felt guilty about feeling it almost immediately afterward. I want to talk about something more specific, something that sits underneath the tiredness and the resentment and the 11 p.m. texts and the identity of being the strong one. I want to talk about what being needed is protecting you from. Because here's the thing about the strong friend pattern that almost never gets examined. It is not simply selflessness. It is not simply an excess of empathy or a generous nature or the personality trait we call being a good listener. Those things are real and they are genuinely part of who you are. But underneath them, built into the architecture of why this pattern is so persistent, why it activates so automatically, why the idea of not being the one who holds everyone else feels not just unfamiliar, but actively threatening. Underneath all of it is a structure that was not built from generosity. It was built from fear. By the end of this video, I am going to show you the specific thing you are afraid of, and I am going to ask you the one question, the one you have been engineering your entire social life to avoid, that will tell you more about the quality of your relationships than anything else. We have a story about people like you, and the story is admiring. You are empathic, you are wise, you are the person with the emotional intelligence to handle what other people cannot, the one who stayed calm when everything was falling apart, the one who knew what to say, the one who, when the room got hard, got more present rather than less. These things are true, and they are genuinely admirable. But here's the question the admiring story never asks. Why did you become so good at this? Not how. The how is straightforward. Practice makes fluency, and you have had an enormous amount of practice. I mean, why? What was the original condition that made this the skill you developed above all others? What environment produced a person who is this fluent in crisis, this comfortable in other people's chaos, this available at 11 p.m.? The answer for most people living inside this pattern traces back to something very specific. You learned early, earlier than you should have, younger than was fair, that your value was conditional. Not on your existence, not on simply being present and being you, but on your utility, on how much you could give, on whether in your presence other people felt better than they did before you arrived. Maybe this was explicit, a household where being helpful was visibly, consistently rewarded, and being needy was visibly, consistently costly. Maybe it was subtler than that. A parent who was themselves overwhelmed, who lit up when you managed yourself and dimmed slightly when you didn't, so that you learned the equation not through punishment, but through the simple math of where the warmth came from. Either way, you learned it, and you built a self around what you had learned. If I am useful, I am safe. If I am giving, I am kept. If I am the one who holds it together, there will always be a reason for me to be in the room. And being needed, the specific feeling of being necessary to someone else's emotional survival, that became the closest thing to security that you knew. This is not a character flaw. In the context where it was built, it was the most intelligent adaptation available. It worked. It gave you belonging. It gave you purpose. It gave you a role in relationships that felt reliable and consistent in a way that simple, unearned love perhaps did not. And the problem, the only problem, is that it meant you built an entire identity on the condition of your own usefulness. An identity built on usefulness is always structurally precarious, because usefulness can run out. And underneath the precariousness is a question so quiet and so frightening that you have never once let yourself finish asking it. If I stopped being the strong one, if I needed something, if I fell apart, if I became for a period the person who required holding rather than the person who held, would anyone stay? Let me show you the specific mechanism underneath this pattern, because once you see it, you will recognize it in your relationships with an uncomfortable precision. There is a concept in trauma psychology sometimes called complementary relational patterning, the observation that we don't choose our relationships randomly. We choose them, unconsciously but reliably, to recreate the emotional dynamics that feel familiar. Not comfortable necessarily, familiar. There's a difference. Comfort is what we consciously seek. Familiarity is what the nervous system gravitates towards, because the nervous system is a prediction machine, and prediction, even the prediction of pain, even the anticipation of a dynamic we know to be costly, is less threatening to the nervous system than the unknown. For you, the familiar dynamic is this: one person in emotional overflow, one person in emotional management, one person expressing, one person absorbing, one person visible in their difficulty, one person invisible in their steadiness. You learned this dynamic before you had language for it. It was the water you swam in. And now, decades later, your nervous system does not choose this dynamic consciously. It simply gravitates. The people who arrive in your life with their overflow, their crises, their need for the particular quality of attention you provide, they feel to your nervous system like home. Not because the dynamic is good for you, but because it is known. And here's the corollary that is harder to look at. The people who do not arrive in overflow, the people who are stable, who have done their own work, who are capable of genuine reciprocity, who might actually see you with the same quality of attention you give to everyone else, those people make your nervous system uncomfortable. Not because they are threatening, but because they are unfamiliar. Because a person who is genuinely present, genuinely interested, genuinely capable of holding what you bring, that person is not a crisis to manage. They are a person who wants to know you. And being known, being seen without the buffer of your own usefulness, without the protective function of being the one who gives, that dynamic is not your nervous system was built for. It is, in the most precise psychological sense, more frightening than chaos. Chaos is your first language. Real intimacy, the kind where you are as visible as the person sitting across from you, that language you were never taught.
And so, without conscious intention, you have built a social world that never requires you to speak it.
I want to describe the exhaustion precisely, because I think you have been calling it the wrong thing. You have probably been calling it burnout, or introvert depletion, or just being tired, and those words are not wrong. The tiredness is real, and it is significant, and it deserves to be taken seriously. But the specific quality of depletion that comes from being everyone's strong friend is different from ordinary tiredness, and naming it correctly matters. It is not the exhaustion of having done too much. It is the exhaustion of having been present for too many people while being absent from yourself. It is the depletion of a person who has been, for years, running two simultaneous operations, the visible one, where they show up fully for every person in their life, and the invisible one, where they quietly, continuously manage the fact that nobody is showing up for them. This is not resentment, or not only resentment. It is something more structural than that. It is what happens when the emotional exchange in your relationships runs, over years, in one direction. Not because the people in your life are cruel, most of them are not, but because you have trained them. You have trained them through consistent and fluent demonstration that you do not require the same things you give. That checking in on you is optional because you will always say you are fine. That being present for your difficulty is unnecessary because your difficulty rarely makes it into the room. That the dynamic in which they are the one who expresses and you are the one who receives is simply how things are between you. You taught them that. Not through malice, not through planning, but through the accumulated weight of hundreds of small moments in which you chose to give rather than to receive, in which you deflected the attention back to them before it could fully land on you, in which you answered, "I'm fine," before you had even checked whether "fine" was accurate. And now you are tired in a way you cannot explain to the people who created the tiredness, because explaining it would require you to tell them that the exchange has not been equal. And that revelation would require you to have needed something, and needing something is the one move this entire architecture was built to prevent. You are the loneliest person in the room, not because no one cares about you, because you have made it structurally impossible for their care to reach you. And underneath all of it, underneath the tiredness and the trained dynamic and the loneliness, is a question you have been very carefully, very successfully avoiding for a long time. Are these people here for me, or are they here for what I provide? Here is the insight I want to offer, and I want to be careful with how I offer it because I know it is going to land uncomfortably. The help you give is real, the care is genuine, the love underneath the strong friend pattern is not fabricated. It is one of the most real things about you. And it is also, in a very specific and very important way, a form of distance. Not consciously, not as manipulation, as protection. When you are the support system, when you are the one holding the space, offering the wisdom, receiving the crisis, you are, structurally, in a position that does not require you to be vulnerable. You are the doctor, the container, the steady presence. And the steady presence, by definition, does not need to be held. Which means that as long as you are the strong one, you are safe from the specific terror of being genuinely known. Because genuine knowledge, the kind that comes from real reciprocity, from a relationship where both people are equally visible, requires you to be, at least sometimes, as broken as the person sitting across from you. It requires you to bring your actual uncertainty, your real fears, your unresolved questions about your own life, and to let someone else hold them, without fixing, without turning it into something useful, just holding. And that specific act of being held without immediately converting it into something functional, is the thing your nervous system experiences as more dangerous than anything else. I want to name something that I think is the sharpest truth in this entire video, and I want to say it gently because it is sharp. You are not keeping yourself in the superior position of the fixer because you think you are better than the people you help. You are keeping yourself there because as long as you are above the waterline, as long as someone else is the one drowning and you are on the dock, you cannot drown. The help is real, the care is real, and the distance it creates is also real. And the people who would most genuinely love you, the ones who are capable of the same quality of presence you bring to everyone else, those people cannot get to you because the strong friend position keeps them at exactly the distance required to never have to find out what would happen if they did. Now, let me ask you the question you have been engineering your entire social life to avoid. If you needed something, not something small, not something easily fixed, but something real and messy and ongoing, would the people currently in your life know how to show up for it? Not would they want to, would they know how? Because a person who has been trained to receive from you, who has learned over years that their role in this relationship is to express and yours is to absorb, that person has not developed the muscle of showing up for you, not because they do not care, because you never gave them the chance to practice. Changing this pattern does not require you to stop being the person who shows up. It requires you to stop being only that person, to make yourself occasionally, and then with increasing consistency, as visible as the people you hold. The first practice is what I call the vulnerability drop. Once this week, before someone has the chance to tell you their problem, tell them one of yours. Not a large one, not a crisis, just something true and unresolved that you have been carrying. Watch what happens, not to judge them, to learn. Their response will tell you more about the actual architecture of the relationship than years of being the strong friend has trained you. The second practice is the incomplete fix. The next time someone brings you a problem, give them one real response and then stop. Do not own the outcome. Do not follow up 3 days later to check if your advice worked. Do not hold the problem in your body after the conversation ends. Give what you genuinely have to give, and then, and this will feel physically uncomfortable the first many times you do it, let it belong to them again. You are not their emotional digestive system. You are their friend. The third practice is the hardest and the most necessary, the silence test. The next time there's a lull in a conversation with someone you care about, when there is no crisis to manage, no problem to solve, no function to perform, don't fill it. Let the silence exist. And in the silence, notice who you are. Notice whether the discomfort of not being useful feels like emptiness or like the beginning of something. That something is presence, yours, specifically and entirely yours, not in service of anyone, not performing any function, just here. That's what you have been giving everyone else for years. It's time to give some of it to yourself. There's a question I said at the beginning of this video that I was going to ask you. Here it is. If you had nothing to offer, no wisdom, no steadiness, no capacity to hold someone else's crisis, would the people currently in your life still be there? I know that question might hurt. I know some of the answers that surface when you sit with it honestly might be painful. Some people will leave when you stop being the warehouse. That is a grief worth grieving, and I don't want to minimize it. The relationships built entirely on your utility are real relationships. They have real history, real warmth, real shared experience. Losing them or watching them renegotiate into something smaller is a real loss. But here is what remains after that loss. The people who stay when you have nothing to perform, the ones who show up for the version of you that is tired, uncertain, genuinely in need of something, those are the people who are in love with you, not the function, not the service, not the strong friend who never needs anything. The specific, particular, unrepeatable person underneath all of that, the one who has been in there the whole time, holding everyone else up, waiting for the moment when someone would finally offer to hold them back. You have spent your life making sure everyone else had somewhere to land. It's time to let someone save a seat for you. Put the phone down. Let yourself be found.